welcome back to episode 2 of Star Wars with Meg, where today I'm going to talk about my absolute most favorite book series in the whole entire world, the Star Wars High Republic. Look how beautiful and gorgeous they are on a bookshelf. We're going to make this so simple today. No better time than right now to get into the High Republic. I would love to help get more of you guys into it. I get so many questions asking me to break this down, so we're going to do our best. Promise, I have made this as simple as I can possibly imagine. Also, I have been working really hard on making a Google Drive document that has a list of all of the books in order. It's my personal list, so it's not like super professional, but I'm gonna link it down below so that you guys can access that. Something I made entirely for myself, but I do think could be helpful. I am very passionate about this topic, so I'm sorry if I'm scaring you. Let me set the stage for you. The High Republic era takes place before the Skywalker Saga era. So this is pre anything we've ever seen in film before. It's about 100 years before the Acolyte series that just came out on Disney Plus, and 100 years before that. This era can be characterized by the Jedi being at their peak, pretty much the golden era of Jedi and the Republic, and everything is beautiful and great in this era until it isn't. And I thought these books were going to be that. It's not. It's actually quite devastating. It starts at the beginning of the end of the High Republic, I would say. There's a catastrophic event almost in every single book, and that's just something I feel like you mentally want to be prepared for. When you pick up your first book, I highly recommend you also pick up this character encyclopedia. Just about every single character from the High Republic in it, and I referenced this on my reading journey very frequently, because other than a few characters that we do already know, like Yoda, who is also alive and present in these stories, all of these characters are new, which I think is so exciting, and it's so deliciously full of amazing, the most diverse characters we have seen in Star Wars. There's just a lot of them. With that being said, as beautifully written as this book is, don't read it. Do not read the paragraphs about these characters until you're finished with the books, because there are tons and tons of spoilers. And whether you want to actually have it in book format or you just want to like find some good sources online, definitely recommend you have like a way to reference the characters, because it's a lot of new characters, which is beautiful and amazing, and I don't want you to feel overwhelmed by that at all. Now, where should you start? It totally mirrors the Skywalker trilogies. So we got episodes 4, 5, and 6 first, which is the center of the story. And then we got 1, 2, and 3, which are the prequels. And then we got 7, 8, and 9, which are the sequels. So they did not come out in chronological order. We call that release order. High Republic series did the same exact thing, because it's Star Wars and that's what we do here, I guess. We have phase 1, which are all these beautiful golden white books. And then we have phase 2, which are these blue ones. And then we have phase 3, which are the black ones. Phase 2 actually takes place before phase 1. Half of the beauty of phase 1 is the mystery and the question mark. Phase 2 answers a lot of those and gives background and detail on a lot of the question marks, and I think that journey is beautiful. Let's start with phase 1. You should start with Light of the Jedi. This is an adult novel. This is why I wanted to preface and give a background on this era. The first time I picked up this book, I could not finish it. I gave up on it because I wasn't in the mind space. I wasn't prepared. I had the wrong idea. So I just wanted to set a realistic tone. The first half of the book is a lot of tragedy. So with that being said, I picked it up again about, I don't know, a year later, and I couldn't put it down, because I was prepared mentally for what it was. It's the entry point into the High Republic. It's the first thing that ever came out in book format. Through all of these, but especially in this one, you see just how different the Jedi of this era are to the Jedi in other eras that we know really well. These Jedi don't know tragedy the way our other Jedi that we know do. They're experiencing it for the first time. Seeing them navigate that for the first time, rise to the challenge, step in and put others before them, and describe the Force in ways that I've never even imagined it. Charles Soule did such a good job with that. Avar Kriss, this beautiful blondie, is a prominent character. She's known as the hero of Hetzel to the galaxy, and she, for example, views the Force as a song, and she hears it as a song. Elzar Mann, who is one of her childhood best friends, views the Force as the ocean. Something that movies often can't do is describe things in detail the way that books can, and having the Force described in those ways and many other ways through different characters' depictions is really beautiful. And that's definitely something you'll notice as you read the books, is just like the extra insight you get. And it's just amazing. So book 1, Light of the Jedi. Book 2, A Test of Courage, you'll realize looks small and a lot more childlike. This is what we call a middle grade novel, and people who are wrong will tell you that you don't need to read these. And like I said, they're wrong. And the reason I say that as someone who's read everything is that these characters will grow up and become part of the young adult books. They become part of the adult books. You're gonna miss a lot of the extra details. And another thing is, so for example, Justina Ireland wrote this one. Justina Ireland wrote young adult books as well. The amazing authors of the High Republic era take turns writing middle grade, young adult, and adult books. So you can imagine the continuity. You're gonna be feeling like you're missing something. So A Test of Courage introduces Vernestra Rwoh, who you hear them speak about in Light of the Jedi, but you don't know her. So this is how you get to know her. One of my most favorite High Republic characters. She's only 16 when she becomes a Jedi Knight. She's the youngest to ever do it, and that comes with a set of challenges. These are very, very fast reads as well. Not only can you tell there's not that many pages, the font is also quite large. There's a lot of these pages that like don't have text on them. It's such a fast read. I just can't recommend that you skip these. I really can't. As someone who read them like it was a marathon I was trying to finish, having these to split up the heavier tones of the adult novel, honestly like a breath of fresh air, and it really helped to break it all up while still continuing the story. Next is one of my most favorites from the High Republic, which is a young adult novel, Into the Dark by Claudia Gray. Claudia Gray is a fantastic writer. Into the Dark is when I fell in love with a character named Reath Silas, and my love for him has not faded. He grows up so much through this series. Such a well-written character. He's so relatable. He's so adorable. And I really, really, really loved this one. So even though it's a young adult book, it's so important. Don't skip it. A common theme here that you're probably noticing is that I'm saying don't skip, because so many reading guides say you can skip, and I just don't think that's fair to you as a reader to tell you to skip books that have the most beautiful characters and details and moments of the High Republic experience. I just don't want you to miss out on that. Can you understand the story without reading them? Sure. Is it gonna be something that you love the way that I love it if you don't read these? That's where I say I don't think so. Yeah, they're just all very important stepping stones in this beautiful overarching series, and I just don't know why you would limit yourself. Next up is Race to Crash Point Tower, and this is another middle grade book. This one is by Daniel Jose Older. This introduces a character named Ram Jamaram, who is very, very present in the series. He's a very important character. He's a very lovable character. He's so cute, and he's basically like a classic sheltered Jedi turned hero type story, and I just love that about him. If you've ever heard anybody in the Star Wars universe say wizard like as an adjective for something that's really cool, Ram Jamaram coined that phrase. He started it, and it made its way through the galaxy. This is where he gets introduced to us. Such a fast read. Next up, we have our second adult novel, The Rising Storm, which is a doozy of a book. Honestly, all of the adult books almost are very, very heavy and masterpieces. It just progresses the story along further, so definitely read this one next. This is also the first of Cavan Scott's in the High Republic. Continuously one of my favorite authors in the High Republic, so this is your intro to Cavan Scott. This is one of those books that you just look at and feel the weight of it. It's big and heavy, but it's heavy. Next up, we have Out of the Shadows, which is another one of my most favorite books. Once again, Justina Ireland, and it's got Reath Silas and Vernestra Rwoh in it, so you know I ate this up. Those are two of my most favorite characters. This introduces a new important plot. It's just got really vibrant characters in it, and I love this one. Next up, I do not have in physical form because it was an audio drama. So Tempest Runner looks like this. It's an audio drama, but they do sell it in a printed script version. I don't recommend you read it. I recommend you listen to it because because you're not just sitting there listening to somebody speak, you're listening to a whole hired cast of voices with such magnetic voices that they're really fun to listen to. This was such a fun first experience with audio dramas for me, and I'm kind of obsessed with the whole idea of it. Lorna Dee's voice in particular was really stinking cool, and I actually just listened to the sequel to this that's in phase 3, and it was one of my most favorite things, which I'll talk about later, but definitely recommend this because it kind of gives a really cool background on a villain who I'm saying villain because I thought she was a villain until I listened to this. She's a little more nuanced, and I love a great character. And if you love a great character, you'll love this book. Let me play a sample of it and see if I can kind of give a little preview.
Far, far away.
Like, is that cool?
The only reasons anyone comes to Shred. Huh. What about you?
It cuts off the preview before I can show you Lorna Dee's voice, but her voice is so stinking cool. It's worth it just to hear her. So that's Tempest Runner, also by Kevin Scott. Then we have Mission to Disaster, which is my favorite of the middle grade books. All about Vernestra. I feel like this book is like Star Wars at its core, at its most fun. It's such a good adventure. It offers really great insight on Vernestra and Imri's Padawan master relationship. Funny because the High Republic is still ongoing, but I just know Vernestra has got to be one of the most important puzzle pieces, so anything that she's involved in, I'm like so sad for. And then I recommend you move on to Fallen Star. A lot of people will recommend that you actually go on to Midnight Horizon next, but I like to order my books based off of where each of them ends. Where Midnight Horizon ends is beyond where this book ends. Fallen Star is the final of the adult novels by Claudia Gray. This wraps everything up for a certain subset of characters, and then Midnight Horizon will wrap up phase 1 for the rest of the characters that are not very prominent in this book. Tragic masterpiece, sets up a lot of mysteries to come. Just really, really freaking good. Claudia Gray is such a great writer. And then we move on to Midnight Horizon, which I specifically remember listening to the majority of this on audiobook while I painted this wall. My Tatooine sunset. This is a young adult, but it doesn't read like one, in my opinion. It reads like an adult novel. To be honest with you, the young adult novels in general in the High Republic feel more mature. This book has the most delicious details about some of the best characters in the High Republic. It's drenched in Reed Silas and Ram Jamaram, who I've already made pretty clear I love. And they're together in this book, and I love their dynamic together. It has humor, it has so much heart. If I were to be asked which book out of all of phase 1 I would like to reread, it would be this one. Daniel Jose Older knows these characters so well, and you can just tell. Actually, one of Yoda's many Padawans is in this book. My favorite of Yoda's Padawans, probably. So even Yoda is in this. This is definitely in my top 5 of all of the High Republic books, for sure. And this is where we wrapped up phase 1, and so it was bittersweet in that way as well. Now, you may have noticed I skipped over some comics while pointing out the books. The comics are not something I dove right into when I dove into the books, and you do not have to. If you do not like reading comics, don't read them. The authors of the comics are also the authors of the books for the most part, and so they do their best to summarize the events of the comics in the books so that you generally know what's going on. But there will be moments where they graze over something that feels like it should be a bigger story in the books. And if you feel that way, I say probably 100% of the time there's a comic that expands on that story better with more attention and detail than the books are going to give it. That being said, if you're entering the High Republic right now, you're kind of in luck. Also, tons and tons of side comics with you. If you're like me and you're at a point where you've read everything and you just want more High Republic, you can read the manga, you can read comics. But there are some comics that fit right in the timeline with these characters that I think are worth reading. But like I said, you can go back and fill in gaps afterwards if you just want to focus on the books for now. And they've made it very, very easy, especially for phase 1 because it's been finished for a while. This is an omnibook of all of the comics. They're all in here. You don't have to go and search and find all the individual printed versions. just by this, and it's got it all in here, which makes it really, really easy. And there are a few different runs, but the two important ones that I would focus on are the ones published by Marvel, like this, and then the High Republic Adventures. And this is the complete of Phase 1, and it actually says on here, the complete Phase 1. So these are the two that I would focus on if you want to focus on the comics. They cannot make it any easier than this for you to read the comics. So start here and see how you feel about it. Both of these storylines definitely have some of the more rich character relationships that are present and you get totally by just reading the books, but you might find that you want more detail, and that's where the comics come in. We also have Starlight Stories, which is another expansion upon the books. And there's just some short stories in here that are fun reads, but like I said, not necessary, but you can pick this one up as well if you are a completionist and you want it all. So that's where we end Phase 1. And then we go into Phase 2, which is the prequels to Phase 1. I approached Phase 2 with a bit of a sour attitude because I just wanted to go into Phase 3. I wanted to go into Phase 3 so bad. I just wanted to continue with these characters that I loved so much. I wasn't ready to pause. If you feel that way, don't do it. Just do Phase 2 because it's so important and it really sets everything up. And it makes everything in Phase 3 so much richer after reading Phase 2. It was just hard. And I know my sister went through the same thing. She actually is still stuck in Phase 2 because it was just really hard to let Phase 1 characters go for a little bit. But trust me, it's worth it. Phase 2 is also really fun because it's when the Jedi are actually at their peak. It's what I thought Phase 1 would be. The Jedi are everything. They're on top of their game. They're loved. They're respected. This is when the Jedi are what you want the Jedi to be. So that is such a fun angle and time period for this. They have hardly any enemies, all but one, the Path of the Open Hand, which leads us to the first book, Path of Deceit. We learn about the Path of the Open Hand, which is bone-chilling. It sets up everything. This is the foundation of the entire everything with the main villain especially. You see two beautiful, lovely young people fall in love, but their belief systems pull them apart. It's kind of like a space Romeo and Juliet, but with so much more to it than that. I can't say too much about it without spoiling everything. So good, one of the best. Next up, we have Quest for the Hidden City. This is where I will say for the very first time that if you find that you are not interested, it's not completely necessary for you to read this. This one is a really sweet father-son story and introduces some of our heroes of Phase 2. Probably my least favorite of all the High Republic books, but it was still a really fun read. If you're not vibing with it, however, read a summary of it. It's not crazy integral to the overarching story, but some of the characters they introduce continue to pop up. So for that reason, I would say read it still, or at least read a summary of it. Then we go on to Convergence. Zoraida Cordova is an angel for writing this book, honestly. I was deeply shocked by how captivated I was by this book because I just thought I for sure couldn't fall in love with characters from Phase 2 with how much I loved the characters from Phase 1. I didn't think there was room in my heart for more, but there was. Alas, I found room, and this is a really, really good read. It introduces characters like Axel Greylark, who I think is like Star Wars' Loki character, essentially. Very gray, very morally confusing, but you just love him so much because he's so charming. But yeah, it focuses a lot on Axel Greylark and a Jedi named Gela, who is everything I would want to be in a Jedi. It focuses a lot on the Battle of Irem and Arano, has a lot to do with the Battle of Jedha, which I'm sure you've heard referenced in other Star Wars things. So it's just a really, really awesome backstory. This is probably one of the most fun reads in all of the High Republic. This book I do not have on my shelf because it is another audio drama. This one has nothing to do with The Tempest Runner, but it's another audiobook drama, same format. This one is called The Battle of Jedha. This is another one of my favorites from the High Republic. As someone who has heard the Battle of Jedha referenced in so much other Star Wars media, it was so exciting for me to basically have a front row seat of the Battle of Jedha. It's so stinking good. Once again, you can read it in printed format, but I highly recommend the audio drama. It's a great experience. It's right here in the timeline and it has all of the same characters in it, so it's really cool to hear what their voices are supposed to sound like. It's something you don't always get when you're reading a book, so do love that. Next up, we have the quest for Planet X. Full of Unexpected Heroes introduces Planet X to us, which is very, very integral to Phase 2, and I'm hoping integral to Phase 3. I love a middle grade novel that has a main cast of children / teenagers who impress me and inspire me. It's a very quick read, and I loved it. Next up, Cataclysm with beautiful Axel Greylark. Someone who disappoints you, surprises you, makes you happy and proud all at the same time. Axel Greylark. I was actually so excited because I posted about this book on Threads and Lydia Kang actually saw it, and so that was awesome. Definitely one of my top 5 favorites of the High Republic as well. Look at him with his purple saber. He's not a Jedi. And a blaster in the other hand. He works hand in hand again with Gela. Yoda and Yaddle are present in this book. It's also kind of a love story in maybe more ways than one. It does everything in a book that I love about a book. And again, like I said, if I could choose to reread one book from Phase 2, I think it would be this one. I'm staring at this picture of Axel and I'm like, I miss him. I might need to reread this soon. And then we have our final book, which is Path of Vengeance. In this era of the High Republic, for the most part, this is when the Jedi are at their peak. This is when they do not have many enemies. They're regarded and they're loved by all except for the Path of the Open Hand, who thinks that the Force should be free and not manipulated. They want people to dislike the Jedi. They think of bad events happening as karma for the Jedi manipulating the Force. It's very, very interesting to see the dynamic of these different factions and these different beliefs and how they butt heads. This one really makes you pause and think. This is where Phase 2 ends, and there's still lots and lots of questions after Phase 2, but it's wild. Kevin Scott is really good at delivering these books that are just like gut punches. It was a beautiful end to Phase 2. And then, before you head into Phase 3, you're going to want to read Tales of Light and Life, which is a collection of short stories written by a lot of the different authors from the High Republic. It answers questions that connect Phase 1 and Phase 2. It wraps up some of the extra questions you might still have left about Phase 2, and it also gets you in the mind space to pick back up with Phase 3. Some of my favorite stories are in this. It was so crazy good. And just like Phase 1, Phase 2 has comics. We have the omnibus for Phase 2 as well. All of the storylines from these comics finish before Quest to Planet X if you want to go ahead and read all of this before you do Planet X. They also have Tales of Enlightenment, which is additional short stories, which I would say for the end of Phase 2 as well, just more short stories if you want. These are the 2 High Republic adventure comics that are out for Phase 2 right now. The Omnibus is not out yet. I believe the Omnibus does come out late in January, so we're almost there. I recommend you just pick up because it just makes it so much easier. One comic book I might tell you not to skip here is Shadows of Starlight. This is probably something you might want to read before you start Phase 3, the books, but you don't have to. I actually did. Now in hindsight, I would have liked to have read this one before. Phase 3 is the phase that we are currently in, and it is not finished yet. So I will cover as far as we've gone so far, but this is not a complete Phase 3 because this Phase 3 is happening right now. Phase 3 picks up where Phase 1 left off with the Eye of Darkness, which is a good year after the events of The Fallen Star and Midnight Horizon. It tells you the state of the galaxy after the tragedies that happened in Phase 1. It's a good intro back into this timeline, and you see heroes really struggling with knowing how to proceed. They're not winning in this book, which is an interesting take. It really sets the scene for how horrible of a state the galaxy is in for Phase 3. After Eye of Darkness, we have Defy the Storm, which was another one of my favorites. You see Vernestra Rowe. I love this cover. It's one of those gratifying moments where a lot of middle grade novel characters bump up to having their own young adult book. Vernestra's on a mission to find someone very important to her. I want to be able to say more, but I don't want to spoil some of the events of phase 1. It's very Vernestra focused, and the characters surrounding Vernestra are dynamic and amazing. I love books like this because they have very prominent, eclectic, vibrant characters on the side as well to balance out the seriousness of it. And we have Escape from Valo, which is another Ram-focused story. If you're a Ram fan, you'll love this to this point. It introduces some new little Padawans because a lot of our Padawans from phase 1 have grown up. So now, back in more middle grade books, we're introducing new younger characters who are so unique, and these characters will continue to pop up in the rest of phase 3, so loved this one. And we have Temptation of the Force. This is my most favorite of all of the High Republic books I've read so far. This book is a long time coming. It is like nothing you have ever seen in Star Wars before. I love the way they speak about the Force and love and relationships between Jedi. So if you were to describe the events of this book to somebody who know the Jedi to be more Luke Skywalker type, this would definitely be a shock. But it makes so much sense in context and the way it's written. It makes so much sense. Tessa Gratton, thank you for this. Seriously, I cried tears. I cried a lot reading a lot of these. But this one, in between tragedy and tragic events and heartbreak and hardship, there are such beautiful, lovely moments and reminders of light and what light is and how light feels and looks to different people. I just love this book so much. Up next, we have Beware the Nameless, which introduces, that's a hut, and his name is Churro. So cute. What I really love is that one of the characters in this book is a descendant from Axel Greylark's family from phase 2. So that's really fun. Who doesn't love a hut who's not actually evil and doesn't fit in with his family at all? It's such a cute read. And as we approach the end of phase 3, I am so excited to see more from Churro the Hut. And that takes us to the most recent book that came out, Tears of the Nameless. It's another young adult, very heavily focused on Wreath Silas, so of course I loved it. Wreath is growing up. You can just kind of feel things starting to take a turn towards finality, and I'm literally terrified of losing any of these characters that I love so much. We'll see what's to come. This is the most recent chapter book that's come out. That leads us to the final, most recent thing that has come out. That is another audio drama called Tempest Breaker. And once again, it's about Lorna D. It has a lot of the same returning cast from Tempest Runner, music to my ears. That's when you'll realize you might want to read the Marvel Omnibus to get the details, but this does a really good job of kind of summarizing from Lorna D's perspective of the Marvel comics from phase 1. As far as comics go for phase 3, because we are not finished with even the books yet for phase 3, there are comics that I have been staying on top of collecting, but I say just wait for the Marvel Omnibus to come out, and then the High Republic Adventures also wait for that complete phase 3 to be published. It will simplify that for you so much. If you would like to read completely in chronological order, I've done my best on the Google Doc to split up the comics timeline wise. So you can look at that and see if that's how you want to approach it. I'm not even going to try and talk about it in that way because I think your brains would explode. The comics do a great job of adding extra detail and angles, and that is great. But I don't want it to be overly complicated for you. It doesn't have to be. This is where we're at so far with the High Republic. We have a handful of books still to be published this year. We have Into the Light, which Into the Dark is definitely a top 5 High Republic book for me. So the fact that we're coming back around with Into the Light. So that comes out April 1st, which is a young adult novel, again, about Wreath Silas. So I know I'm gonna love it and hopefully not be heartbroken at the end of it. A Valiant Vow comes out on May 6th, which is a middle grade novel. And then we have our final adult novel called Trials of the Jedi coming out on June 17th. And that is where I think we are going to be wrapping up the majority of the High Republic. Anyway, this is a very long video and I hope it was helpful. If you're one of those people who says they want to know this story so well but you do not have time to sit down and read, or you just can't focus when you sit down and read, I highly recommend audio booking all of it. I've listened to so many of these on audiobook and they are produced so beautifully. Once you hook up with your local library, you can get Hoopla and Libby, and that is a great resource to listen to the audiobooks. Audible also is a great option if you're a member, especially because then you can just use your free credit to do an audiobook. That's everything so far for the High Republic. I hope more than anything that I've simplified this for you because I don't want to scare you. I don't want you to be too intimidated that you never start. It's really not that hard. Once you're reading it, you'll know exactly where you are and have an understanding of what's going on. And I know so many people who absolutely love these books the way that I do, and I'm hopeful that I can encourage a lot of you to go on this reading journey. The High Republic reinvigorated my love of reading. Because of the High Republic, I read 40 books last year, a lot of them being these ones, but a lot of them not even being Star Wars books. I felt like I found my place in the space of reading again. I've read so many other Star Wars books as well, and I've had a lot of people request that I talk about some of those too. So if you'd like me to do a video of my favorite Star Wars books I've read so far outside of the High Republic, please let me know. I think that would be super fun to talk about. I don't want you to be scared of this journey because it is so rewarding. If you felt that this video was helpful, please like and subscribe and tune in next week for episode 3 of Star Wars with Meg. Happy reading, you guys. May the Force be with you for light and life. Bye.